Ladies and gentlemen, adventurers of all ages, welcome to Point Noir, home of the Point Noir podcast, where we not only inspire but equip men of color to go out and see the world for themselves. I'm Jerry III, aka Kimono Jack, your host and tour guide for this audio adventure experience, and I'm so glad you're with us for yet another session of the Point Noir podcast. It's session 35, y'all. That feels really, really good to say. Just keep moving along. Your support, all the words, all the DMs, all the reviews that you guys are leaving on iTunes, it means the world, so keep that coming. And if you don't know already, if you're just tuning in, you need to know something super important. So, turn up the volume a little bit. Every month, we sponsor a man of color to get his passport, to go see the world, to go have his own adventures. It's something we firmly believe in here, and we've been doing it every single month since the podcast has been started. So if you or somebody you know or care about needs a passport, hit us up. For all the details, you can go to our IG page at Point Noir Show, PointNoirshow. If you get really lost, slide in those DMs and I'll make sure to get right back to you so that we can get your submission. It's super important that men of color see the world, that we travel more in general, and we're here to support that cause by putting our money where our mouth is. So hit us up at Point Noir Show, get all the details there. We want to sponsor your passport, so spread the good news. As always, we have another incredible guest coming up, so let's get to introducing them. Joining us today as our special guest at The Point is Cedric Hutchison. If you're not already, make sure to follow him on Instagram at CedInTheCity. This impressive brother has been spending the past several years in Asia teaching English, and his perspective, what he's learned from the experience, is so amazing. I'm so glad he could spend some time with us on the show. He talks about the start to his career in Asia, how he's learned so much from befriending and meeting other members of the African diaspora while out there, and he also shares some of his top tips and tricks for not only traveling Asia affordably, but frequently, because he is always on a trip. We also talk a bit about his new company, the Roman Republic, and these amazing group trips they're putting on all around the world throughout the year. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned to learn how you might even be able to be a part of some of these amazing experiences that Ced is putting together. So, as always, grab your refreshing beverage of choice, find your favorite chair, get ready to sit back and enjoy today's session. I'll see you on the flip side. What's going on, Ced? Thank you for joining us at The Point. How are you feeling today, bro?
I'm good, man. It's almost the weekend, one more day of work, and then I have 5 days off for Chinese New Year's.
Hey.
I plan on going to Laos for that time period, so I'm really just trying to push through, finish this week off strong, and then head out. I'm excited.
Right, and it's morning where I'm at in Dallas. Where are you located right now, and what time is it?
I'm in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and it's about 11 p.m. At night.
Man, that's commitment. For you to be up way past most of our bedtime, still go to work tomorrow and want to be on a podcast for an hour, bro. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All good, all good.
That's what's up, bro. So, you're out there in Kuala Lumpur. I've been following you on IG for a while. Your stories are funny. You've been traveling a lot and putting some cool stuff together. So I'd love the opportunity to learn how you got started traveling. Like, tell us where you're coming from in the States. And let's start there. Let's start at the beginning. Where are you coming from?
So I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I was born in Dallas, Texas, actually. And then but I grew up in Atlanta. And I would say I started traveling in high school, like around the time I was finishing high school. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Airtrain U, but they used to run like standby specials for people that were 18 to 24 at the time. No, 18 to 22, I think. And you basically go, and if there's an open seat, you pay by segment. So from Atlanta, I could get to like New York or Miami, since we're on the same time zone, for like $59. So every time zone you went past, it would be $59, $69, $79, $89. So like a flight from Atlanta to LA, standby would be like $89. So like the summer I graduated, I took advantage of that a lot. Yeah, I mean, some people know about it. A lot of people don't, because AirTran isn't around anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, that's definitely...
You think that's why they're not around anymore? Because they were giving away flights to kids?
Well, I forget what airline bought them out. But I mean, the program was amazing until I got stuck in LA for like 48 hours because all the flights were full. And I was like, never again.
Wow. Wow.
So
How'd you even hear about that though? Was that kind of the regional thing? Did you have some friends who were doing it that put you on game? How'd you find out about it?
actually, my older sister Ashley, she used to do it when she was in college, and I knew that she was always everywhere. So I'm like, okay, as soon as I turn 18, I'm gonna use that same program and like get out there.
That's smart, dude. That's awesome. And did your family typically travel a lot? Did you have a lot of travelers that you knew of, uncles, aunts, your parents? What was that like?
Definitely not. My mom was a military brat growing up, but as far as during my childhood, my family, we traveled because me and my sisters played sports. So we would travel
Okay.
for like tournaments and stuff, but not just all the time. Like I can think of maybe 4 or 5 vacations, but we typically went to like Florida or like a beach in like North or South Carolina. And then once we went to the Caribbean. But for the most part, I wouldn't say my family's full of people that travel a lot.
Okay. So it was a little bit more regional for, competing or vacation.
Definitely.
Okay. That's what's up. So what got you interested to keep doing more? Dude, you live halfway across the world. You stay in touch with your peoples in Atlanta. I've just been following you. And you share a lot about your personal life. What made you want to continue to travel? And maybe you could talk about your first big international trip. What was the first trip to you where you said, you know what, I need to keep seeking new experiences out in the world?
So this girl I went to high school and college with, when she graduated before me, and she moved to Amsterdam. So when it was my turn to graduate, I took a trip out there, and I went to Turkey, I went to Amsterdam, I went to Barcelona, Paris, and Belgium, all in the same trip. It was about I think 12 days. It was right before I graduated.
Wow.
Like we finished the reading period, and I went on
Yeah.
this trip. And it was just an amazing time. And I'm like, damn, if Brianna's out here and she can travel and like she's doing this, like there's no reason why I can't. And at the time, I actually had a job offer to go work in Nashville. And I had signed it like 4 or 5 months before. So I already thought I had a plan. But that trip is when I'm like, nah, I'm not going to Nashville. And I just applied for jobs online. And as soon as I got one, I don't think I told anyone as I was applying, but maybe two
Yeah.
weeks later, I signed an offer and I told my parents, like, hey, I'm going to China. And they're like, huh? But yeah, I mean, it was something I always spoke of doing. So I don't think it really caught them off guard. I think it surprises them that I'm actually still living out here, if anything.
Right, right, right. I think sometimes the idea that, finding a job or being gainfully employed, how are you going to make money when you're so far away from home? I think it confuses a lot of people, but there are a lot of opportunities. I'm guessing you were over in China to teach English.
Correct, correct.
Okay, okay. Yeah, how'd you even hear about that opportunity? Was it just research or you talked to your friend Brianna? Was that her name?
Well, actually, Brianna she's never taught. She was doing something in marketing at the time. But
Okay.
my degree is actually in film and my minor is in education. So it was not something that I just like, oh, I just want to move abroad. I kind of knew once I graduated, I would plan to teach abroad. And I'm very passionate about education. So like I took an ed course, I think my freshman year, and I'm at that point I was just like, okay, I really like this field and it's something I want to get into. Even though like as a child or in high school, I always felt like, oh, teachers don't make enough money, I would never teach. But it's kind of something
Right.
that I feel like naturally like just happened. I feel like I was destined to like teach at some point in my life.
That's what's up, bro. And shout out to you for listening to your passion, listening to your interest, because sometimes we do kind of see teaching as kind of like a fallback option. And I think it becomes that for a lot of people. And that's to the detriment of the students and to the people who are showing up every day and dealing with the students. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. And living abroad, you meet so many people like that because especially for like Westerners, it's the easiest way to move abroad. Like a lot of
Right.
places that you don't even have to have a degree. It's just, oh, you can speak English, you're a native, you're white. So like, oh, come over here, get a job. But a lot of these people really don't care about teaching. They just want to live abroad.
Yeah, and full transparency, after I graduated college, I saw opportunities to teach English in South Korea. And I was like, bet, because the tax structure is pretty profitable. Like you could save money in South Korea, you were paid well, and you could like bankroll like 10 G's and come back to the States and not have to pay taxes on it. I was like, oh, this is the move. And I didn't I didn't follow up on those opportunities, but I wasn't passionate about teaching, not in that way, for sure.
Yeah, true. I meet a lot of people like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's one now. I just didn't pull the trigger on it. But yeah, that's really something to consider though, whether you're teaching or in any career, like try to find something that you have an interest in that's beyond the money or beyond, some opportunity that's more temporary, like just being overseas. There are other ways to get there.
Facts, definitely.
So let's talk about this China trip, bro. That had to be a huge cultural difference, especially if you'd only signed the offer letter 2 weeks before. Did you research China? I'm pretty sure Duolingo existed in some form back then. Like, were you working in Chinese? How did you prepare for this literally life changing pivot?
Well, so I interviewed and I signed the offer 2 weeks later, but I didn't move abroad until maybe 2.5 months later. I signed the offer in June and I
Okay,
moved in August. But honestly, I did not prepare myself as much as I should have. But I kind of wanted to not be unprepared, but I wanted like everything to come at me like full force. It was something where I'm like, I really want to go. Well, one, even choosing China, I picked a place that I felt like I would experience the biggest culture shock. I didn't want anywhere that spoke English. Like I wanted something that was completely different from like the States. But I would say I just went online and found other expats that were already living in China, and I would talk to them like, "Oh, what should I bring? What should I do?" But like that summer of me leaving, like, I know I should have been saving. I could have saved a lot more, but like half of the summer, it was the same summer I graduated. So one, I had like graduation money. I was kind of free. And then also it was like my last summer at home before I'm moving abroad. So the whole time my friends are like, oh,
right.
let's party, let's do this, let's do that. So I would say I didn't prepare myself as much as I should have, especially not financially. But my job in China took care of everything. So I knew once I landed, like, I don't have to pay rent. I don't have to pay for food. Like, everything was basically squared away, which is probably why I slacked as far as like preparing myself. But once I actually got there,
Right,
it
because you
was
knew you had a cushion.
correct, correct. But once I actually got there, it was just really the whole move, I feel like, was just me moving on faith because I only talked to these people on Skype. I didn't personally know them. It was just I mean, looking back on it now, I feel like it was such a risky, like sketchy situation that I just really had to put my faith in God. And I'm not super religious, but I know like it
Yeah,
all worked out well because I've heard horror stories of like people getting to China and the company they're working for is a scam and like a bunch of crazy stuff like that. And luckily,
right.
like that didn't happen to me.
Yeah, for sure. And bro, I can definitely relate to kind of being in a faith-based situation. I lived in Paris. You probably don't know this, but I took a one-way ticket to Paris, just quit my job and dipped. And everybody I met was through a friend of a friend. We maybe had a Skype session. I showed up and people took care of me. So definitely that willingness to take a risk or to just rely on people and trust them. When you really want to do something, sometimes it works out that way.
Yeah, definitely. And it was just one of those things I told myself, like, if I don't like it, I can always come back home. Like, so I wasn't stressing
Right.
about, oh, how am I gonna like it? Will I be okay? Like, I wasn't homesick. Honestly, I don't feel like I got homesick until I left China. Like, the whole year in China, I
Okay.
made really good friends there. I had a group of friends that were basically like family. And we saw each other all the time. Like, I was not homesick. I was just so ready to leave Atlanta in the States. Like, I was not homesick at all.
Yeah, I feel you on that. And because I think we might have that in common. And first of all, shout out to you for wanting to be drowned in a new culture, a new cultural experience, saying, let me get the furthest away to the most foreign land that I can, the language, the food, the culture, the customs, and let me just be immersed in this completely. What were you looking for when you were thinking about that? Like, why not go to Europe? Why not go to, more English friendly place? Like, why have the most extreme experience you could have?
Well, I already kind of decided I wanted to go to Asia. My grandmother's Korean, so I wanted to like
Okay.
reconnect with that side of the family, and I felt like I could do that more so if I was somewhere in Asia. But Europe, I don't know. I just felt like everyone in Europe spoke English, and Europe gets very cold. I mean, so did China, but I don't know. I just, at the time, I told myself, I want to live abroad for at least 3 to 4 years. I feel like if I can handle China, I can handle anywhere. So that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to go to China. And then also the salaries in China they're comparable to the salaries in the US. So I wasn't working for like
Okay.
super low wages. Like I was making a good living where I could travel and I could save, like I could do everything I wanted to do without stressing. So that was another reason why I chose China.
Got you. A lot of respect for that choice and sticking to it. And you mentioned you wanted to do anything to get out of Atlanta. And again, I feel like I can relate. I was living in South Carolina, and originally I'm from outside of Philadelphia. So the culture shock of being down south for 7 years, bro, that one-way ticket looked like a big piece of chocolate cake, bro. I was just like, yeah, we're going to get this. Even if it's bad for me, like I need to have this. Was there anything going on for you personally or just in the environment that you said, you know what, anything but this and I'll be better off?
I would say one, Atlanta's a great city, but I feel like Atlanta's easy to like live recklessly as far as because it's such a nightlife city and I grew up there. I went to school there.
Right.
So I had a lot of friends in the city. I was pretty plugged in. But I just feel like, I don't know, I just felt like for what I wanted to accomplish, I couldn't do it in Atlanta. I mean, now, 2.5 years later, the way my life has panned out is definitely not the way I saw it, but I feel like I've stuck
Mm-hmm.
true to my passions as far as traveling and what I want to do film wise and educationally, and with education. But I don't know. I felt
Yeah.
like everything I wanted to do, I couldn't really do it in Atlanta because eventually I want to write and direct movies. So I felt like if I want to get a broader perspective and like learn more about the world, why not actually get out there? And I felt like experiencing different cultures and different ways of life would help me become a better writer, as opposed to staying in the same environment in Atlanta and writing movies and scripts like Two Can Play That Game or The Best Man. I don't know. I just wanted to expand like as a writer and as just a person. And I knew I couldn't do that in Atlanta.
That makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the great writers from any era, they were a lot of times travelers or adventurers who had seen something different in a country and brought it back to, their home base. In your case, it might be Atlanta, might not be, but they brought it back with some new perspective. And that's why we love what they created. It's a smart career path. I wish, high school career advisors had advice like that. We don't do that in the States.
Yeah,
though.
I mean, that I don't know. I just something, but it was also it's kind of just the way everything aligned. I always loved to travel. I always like wanted to work in education, low key, and then I also wanted to do something with film. So it's like I was kind of able to tie like my three main passions in together, and I feel like from that, other opportunities have like fallen into my lap that I never would have expected or that I planned for.
Right. That's what's up. So where'd you go after China?
After China, I was in Prague, Czech Republic.
What?
Yeah, Prague, Czech Republic.
It's definitely cold there, bro. How did you end up there?
I was chasing the European dream. So that at that point is when I'm like, okay, I did my year in Asia. And when I was in China, my job was very lenient. So I was traveling like every weekend. So I thought like, okay, I'm done with Asia. I've seen pretty much everything I wanted to see. Now it's time for me to go to Europe. And when I was applying in Europe, I applied in Czech Republic. I applied for a job in Turkey and I applied for a job in Italy. And I got the one in Czech Republic first. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to take that. And I did a little bit of research about Prague, and most people said, oh, they loved it. It was a very nice, clean city. So I went. What I felt like was just positive reviews from websites, as opposed to like talking to anyone that actually been there or lived there. But once I got there,
Okay.
I was not feeling it.
Right. And this was a totally different approach than how you went to China, where you were interacting with people who actually had been there or were currently teaching.
Yeah, with Prague, at that point, I don't know. I guess I felt like I was experienced. I really didn't need to reach out to anyone. I went there. I didn't know
Right.
anyone. I had like one friend my whole time there. Well, like one good friend. I had a couple of people I hung out with, but Prague it was not for me. I feel like Prague is good for like a weekend trip or like a few days, but living there, it's way too small. There's not enough to do. There's no like people of color there. It's just, I don't know. It just wasn't for me. And I realized that quick.
Right. And it's also pretty cold there, isn't it?
No, it was freezing. And I
Okay.
moved before I left China. I did like a 2-week tour of Southeast Asia. So I went to Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia. So I came off of like beaches and tanks and shorts. And then as soon as I get to Prague, it's like the first week in September and I'm wearing hoodies and jackets. And I was miserable there. And I knew I was miserable the whole time.
Dag, bro. Yeah. Well, since you mentioned there weren't a lot of people of color there, you went straight to China, and from all the people I know that have gone out to Asia, they do realize very quickly that they stand out and they're different. How were you able to take that transition from being in Atlanta, a mostly Black, thriving city, to China and then to Prague? How did your sense of self change as you went to these different countries? What did you learn about people of color and how we're perceived, or men of color even?
In China, the thing is I feel like in China, it's more the old people that might look at you funny, or like the very old, like traditional way. But I don't know. I felt like the young people in China were super receptive to me or to Black people, because I feel like they know that I don't know if they know that they bite a lot of our culture, but they look at us as like the cool kids.
Right.
So the people in China, like, they were super hospitable, like a lot more than I feel like when I hear people talk about visiting China, they always say, oh, like people stared at me, they wanted pictures. But I feel like you only really got that in China when you visit the big, like, touristy places. Okay. Like, so if you go to the Great Wall, chances are there's people from little villages in China that might come up to you. They've never seen a Black person. But I lived in the capital, and like the Black population in Beijing was massive, to be honest. Like there were groups of us that we would have events and there would be 500-600 Black people. And that's something that a lot of people don't know about China, is there's a lot of Black people. Like before I moved to China, I had no idea like the relationship between China and a lot of countries in Africa and how they get most of their resources from Africa. So a lot of people from Africa were in China on like full scholarships, like studying. So there were a ton of students in China that were from Africa. So like, I don't know, there were a lot more Black people than I thought there would be. So I feel like in Beijing, where I lived, people were used to seeing like Black people. So I never felt too uncomfortable. If anything, I felt mostly uncomfortable at my job with my students' parents. I always wondered how they felt about having a Black teacher, but not like on the streets or anything like that. I never felt like uncomfortable, or I never felt like I'm in danger or fear or anything. But the only time I probably ever felt like weary about being Black was when I was at work.
Okay. Probably the most stressful place to feel wary about being Black.
Right.
Right. Okay. And dude, thank you for sharing all that about Beijing, because the fact that you mentioned you were well paid, because I was looking at jobs in China too, those rural jobs do not pay well. So I figured you were near a city to have a pretty comparable, salary. But also that makes a ton of sense. If you are Chinese and you are visiting the Great Wall of China, you're probably coming from the outer parts, the more countryside of the country. So it makes sense that you probably don't interact or see a lot of Black people. So that's a good tip for anybody listening, that, if you're in more of the urban centers, it's a little bit more diverse there.
Yeah, definitely. And any of those places you would, because Beijing is full of history. Like in China, that's the city you go to for like all the traditional Chinese stuff, whereas Shanghai is a lot more modern. So in Beijing, if you go to like Tiananmen Square or the Forbidden Temple or Temple of Heaven, any of those places, of course, is going to be a ton of Chinese tourists at those places who might just want to take a photo with you. But if you're just walking down the street or at a restaurant, like that type of stuff never happened. Most of my friends in China were Black, and we never had that type of stuff happen. It was only when we went to those, like the big glass bridge that hangs between the mountains. That's when you see those people who you can tell they've never seen a Black person.
How can you tell, Ced?
It's just the way that they stare. It's like, I don't know, Chinese people, they stare at you. And sometimes they stare at you like I would say more than half the time they stare at you and they might crack a smile like, oh my God. But then the older ones just look at you like, why are you here? Like I'm disgusted. Right. Just that old, like kind of, but it's funny because it's the same way that I hope my grandma doesn't listen to this. The same way I see my grandma look at people. But I think that's kind of just how like old people are. So it's just like universal. Most old people can be a little bit rude. So
Right. Or maybe it's just them thinking about, man, the world is real different than when I was a kid. Like, what the hell?
Right. Exactly.
That's real. But yeah, and of course, a lot of us, when we're going to these places, we're not living, we're not doing the whole expat thing. So we're only there for a week. So of course, we're going to hit all the hot spots. And it makes sense that a lot of people report on having these very different experiences engaging with the local population.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Okay. And so all these Black people here, but you're really talking about brothers, sisters, cousins from the diaspora. These aren't Black Americans you were hanging out and partying with I mean, there were some of them, of course, but you got to meet a lot of people from the diaspora, from the African continent, from different areas, right?
Definitely, definitely. Especially in China and Malaysia as well. In China, I had some African American friends. In Malaysia, I had three and two of them moved away. I have one. All my black friends here are from Africa or like the UK.
Okay. So what did you learn about the diaspora? Because at this point, you hadn't been to Africa yet, right?
No, 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 I haven't.
Okay. What was that cultural exchange like to kind of see yourself from a different period in time? Like, what was that like?
Well, one, I see the differences. When I lived in China, there's always been like this underlying tension, I feel like, between African Americans and Africans. And in China, it was
Mm,
real. Like, there would be debates all the time about, oh, the Americans act stank. Oh, the Africans have an attitude. So I feel like that. But me personally, I was never one of those people that were like that. I had friends that felt like all Africans had bad attitudes. And I'm like, you can't really stereotype all those people. But I mean, in China, that
right.
whole, like, you could feel the animosity between the two groups. But I would just say
Wow.
that what I've learned about Africa, I mean, just that it's not, I mean, just through meeting people, that it's not how the media portrays it. Like, how I feel like growing up, all I saw of Africa were those like feed the hungry ads. So like that was kind of painted in our
Hmm.
head, like, oh, they don't wear shoes, like stuff like that. That I feel like now we know, of course, that's not true, but that was the narrative that was pushed on us as children. Like Africa's needy and there's nothing but like wild animals and people running around like rampant or whatever. But I don't know. I feel like my African friends are exactly like my American friends. Like they do the same stuff. They listen to the some of the same music. Um, I would say I also learned that people in Sudan, well, I don't know. I feel like I always grew up thinking all people in Sudan were like black, black. And when I say that, I mean like
Hmm.
black, but there's a lot of Arabic people in like Sudan and Libya. I never knew that those countries had like a ton of Arabic people.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
completely
Yeah. Yeah.
caught me off guard. What else? I don't know. I feel like I've learned so many different sides of Africa because I have friends who like from Rwanda or Nigeria, and they complain about all the problems with their government and like the corruption. So I've just learned a lot about I feel like different aspects of the country that I never knew like before. It would be hard for me to just pinpoint one thing though.
Right, absolutely. Or maybe you found a fashion or a music, but I appreciate everything you shared, man, because having that face-to-face interaction, that really breaks down these illusions we have about each other, the lies that come from the media or just the false images. And a lot of us here in the States never get that experience. Dallas is pretty diverse, has a strong African population, which confuses the shit out of me because I'm like, bro, y'all could have been anywhere else, but y'all pulled up in Texas. So there's a lot of potential for, one-on-one interaction. But when I was growing up, I didn't know anybody of African descent that I was aware of.
Well, it's interesting to me because I feel like I don't want to say being African in America right now is like a cool thing. I remember growing up,
Oh yeah,
like,
it's
and
popping.
I've heard Africans talk about this now. Like growing up, people, and I was probably guilty of it, talked about Africans like, oh, African booty scratcher, like all that type of stuff. I remember people would mock accents. My next door neighbors growing up I'm pretty sure they're Nigerian. They were Nigerian.
Mm,
And I remember like making fun of their accent, talking about like just petty child stuff. But now it's like the cool thing to do. Oh, they're African. Oh, all this melanin. Oh, like it's like a trendy right now, pretty much. Their dances, their music,
right.
all of that is like becoming way more mainstream than it ever was because I feel like Afro beats has always kind of been around. Like I remember listening to African music from my neighbor. And back
Mm,
then, I feel like that type of music would not have ever like been like played on radio or in clubs. But going out and being in Atlanta, and I mean, even in China, they played a lot of Afro beats. That's honestly where I got introduced to Afro beats. But it's just crazy how like now it's kind of like it's like a hip thing.
right. It's in vogue. It's popular. But yeah, you're right. From guests on the show, because again, I didn't have anybody in my area where I grew up that was of African descent. But guests on the show have shared that yeah, we got made fun of or this, that, and the other because of my parents. And it's funny how things all turn around.
Right.
Bet. So what was the Czech like, and where'd you go after the Czech Republic?
So after Czech Republic is when I came to Malaysia. And
Okay.
Czech Republic, the sun set at 4:30 every day. It was cold, so I would leave work and it's pitch black. It looks like midnight and it's only 5 o'clock.
Wow.
There just was not much to do there. Like, and I had a couple, like I had one black friend, and it's not that I only like having black friends, but I mean, it's just a level of comfort. And I feel like other black people can relate, but it's just like a trust or a bond that I just don't feel with other people of other nationalities or ethnicities. But I
Hmm.
had one friend and he went back home for 3 months. So I was there. I don't know. I was just so lonely. And I felt like coming from Beijing, where I had this really solid group of friends, to going to Prague, where I had one friend. And I don't know. It was just not what I expected. It was really nice. I really loved the area I lived in. Like the flat I had in Prague was amazing. Like I had a nice view. It was really, really nice, a really big flat. But that was the only thing I liked about Prague. Like I didn't care for the food there. I didn't care for the people. Like Czech people, I guess because there's so many like Russians there and they have a Russian influence, they're just very cold.
Hmm.
And I don't think they were necessarily rude. It's just the way they are. They're like stern, they're cold. And I don't know. I feel like I put myself in situations where I can be talkative even when I want to keep to myself, because I feel like living abroad, you never know who you're going to meet and you kind of just have to put yourself
Right.
out there. And in Prague, people were not receptive besides like my coworkers or people I would meet out at bars and stuff. But in Prague is also like the beer capital of the world. So everyone there is like a heavy beer drinker. I really don't like beer. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like the only way to meet people or have fun is to go to a bar and drink beer. And that's just not me.
Understood. Understood. I agree with you. I need a more liquor-based economy and culture.
Definitely.
Right. It helps with beach season when we pop out to the beaches out in Southeast Asia.
Exactly.
And then you went to Kuala Lumpur, and it was from following your stories. Actually, also we have a mutual friend in common now. How not to travel like a basic bitch. Shout out to her, because following your page, I got onto her page, and I was talking to her, and she was like, "Yo, you should reach out to Ced." And I was like, "I've been following this cat. Like, yes, I should reach out to Ced." So shout out to Kiona doing it big and educating.
Yeah, she's cool. I love her.
She's super dope.
Definitely, definitely. She's so woke. She's like woke for real. I half the time when I read her stories, I'm just like, yo, I mean, she be putting me up to stuff I never thought of.
Right. Absolutely.
And the way she just delivers, she's super entertaining. And I feel like that's hard to do via like Instagram or via stories, but like she's super entertaining and I love everything that she supports. I think she's super dope.
And she's reflective and will correct herself. So she's a great example. Y'all check out How Not to Travel Like a Basic Bitch on IG. She's super dope. But speaking of culture and heritage, were you able to reconnect with those parts of your family and your lineage? Because you represent, you're a man of color. You identify as Black, I feel like, a lot of the time, but you're also very proud of your Korean heritage. And that's what we call intersectionality, kids. That's when we have these, layered perspectives or viewpoints. How has that grown for you since you've been overseas and been in Asia?
I would say I'm definitely more in touch with my Asian side here. I just feel in Asia, and I think this is what I didn't like about Europe. I just feel like I belong. Whether or not people look at me and they can immediately tell that I'm Korean, I just
Yeah.
feel like I'm so much more in tune with like Asian culture and like I feel like it's such a perfect match that I don't know I would get. I mean, and I want to eventually one day live in South America or Central America or Africa. I just don't know if I would get the same exact match and feel that I have here anywhere else. But I would definitely say living in Asia has taught me so much, not just about like being Korean, but like in Malay, I'm not sure if you're aware, but like the people of Malaysia are there's Malay people, there's Indians, and there's Chinese.
Okay.
Together, these three make up Malaysians. So like living here, I'm tapped into so many different cultures because Malaysia is so diverse. And in China, I was around Chinese people. I don't know. I feel like I've learned to deal with the different types of Asian people. In return, that's taught me so much about myself, or why my grandmother was the way she was before she passed away, or why my mom is the way she is. And like reconnecting with cousins and aunts and uncles and stuff like that, it's just taught me so much about not just myself, but like my heritage and just like my background, I feel like a lot of me makes sense because I'm a super adventurous person and no one else in my family is like that except for like some of the Koreans in my family. But my dad's side of the family is none of them are like that. Like I remember when I went skydiving, they all were like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And even when I travel, like they're still like, "Oh no, like I could never do that."
Right. And your dad's side of the family is the black African American side?
Correct. Well, my mom is also African American.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's mixed. My grandmother on my mom's side is Korean.
Okay.
My dad's actually black and white as well, but he doesn't really identify with white, and so I feel like I don't either. But
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to understand the dynamics because one thing that you share and, you know, your stories and the way you present on social media, on Instagram specifically, is very real. Like you talk the way you need to talk. You take shots of, you know, take pictures of what you feel you need to take pictures of, but you talk about, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but you talk about feeling a little bit more rooted on that Asian side because we don't know, you know, so much of our history has been erased on the black side. And, you know, I wonder if you've had discussions like this with other black travelers, because one thing I found as I journeyed out into the world was I felt slowly but surely more rooted in just, okay, who black people are, who we've been in the world. And have you had discussions like this with other black travelers who might not have had a little bit of an anchor in their heritage like you do?
I would say yes, but not with African American.
Really?
I feel like, well, I say that because I feel like at this point, the few that I have had these conversations with, they kind of just feel like at this point, like this would go back into my friend in China, the one that he really just didn't get along with a lot of Africans there. And he used to feel like, and I would tell him like, bro, that could have really been us. Like slavery and all that happened, which stripped that away from us. But like, we're pretty much one and the same. But he felt like at this point, my ancestors have been in America long enough. I'm American. So I feel like I meet people with that mindset that don't really, I don't know, that don't really get it, like tap into where they really are or where they're from. Like what's interesting to me is, I don't know, naturally in Malaysia, a lot of my friends are Nigerian. So I feel like I've learned about a lot about Nigerian culture. When I was home in Atlanta, my grandfather did an ancestry test, and it turns out, and he was actually adopted, so he never knew his real parents. And when he did his ancestry test, it turned out that he was like 90 something percent Nigerian. So no, it wasn't 90. It was a little bit less than that. But I forgot what the percentage, I broke it down to me. I'm like, okay, that means my mom is this amount of, like my mom is pretty much 50-50. I forgot what I broke it down to with me, but it made me realize like, oh wow, like I mean, that's the most I can credit to my African side is knowing some of me is Nigerian. But it's so interesting because here, most of my African friends are Nigerian. So like I've learned a lot about that culture. And I would say that through that, I've just had talks about like what it is to be black, how they feel it is to be black, how they feel like we differ in America. I feel like I drifted off from the question.
No, you're totally good, man, because I think this is an interesting discussion. I kind of want to dig into it because, you know, ancestry.com or whatever, not to plug the site, but I see a lot of travelers, black travelers, those of influence and those not, kind of clamoring for these opportunities to, you know, look at their genetics and figure out where they're coming from. So I feel like people want to connect in some way because we feel unrooted, you know, for sure, I think. And it's interesting that the people you've encountered abroad, though, didn't seem to share this trait in common.
The thing is, I feel like a lot of well, no, I don't know if I can say that. I was going to say, I'm thinking about my black male friends. A lot of them are not professionals working abroad when I think about it. Some like students, some that are just really here, some that are illegal. I can think of maybe one or two that are actually like professionals in travel. So a lot of my friends abroad, they don't travel a lot. So I think that's why they might not share these perspectives. They just live here. But some of them can't leave the country. Some of them are students, so they don't work or have a lot of money. So that's why a lot of the times also when I travel, I'm alone. Because a lot of my friends abroad are not, I wouldn't say they're travelers. I know a lot of people who travel, but like my close-knit of friends in Malaysia are not people that travel, with the exception of like one girl.
Okay. Okay. So in that way, they're more similar to someone who's never left Atlanta or hasn't had a lot of opportunity to leave Dallas versus someone who's country hopping and, crossing borders a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, that's real, and I think it's really interesting that can exist. That perspective can exist on the other side of the world because you think, okay, you're black, you're American, you're all the way over here. You must have, you probably have some sort of, I don't want to say enlightened view, but some additional perspective about, your self identity and your history. But it can very easily not be the case, apparently.
No, I mean, I definitely feel like if people are out here taking advantage of what like opportunities are at hand, then they will get like a different perspective. But I also feel like a lot of people become so content. And that's another thing that surprises me. People that move abroad but don't like to really travel while they're abroad. Like when I was in
Mm,
China, I had friends that they loved China so much they were so content with it. Like they felt like, no, I don't. Why would I go somewhere else, even just to travel?
right.
So that perspective was always interesting to me.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective because, as I've traveled around the world, and for me, myself, I consider myself an adventurer, not a traveler. So I pulled up in Paris for a year and a half, but I also got to see a lot of Africa. I didn't do a lot of Europe because Europe doesn't excite me, but I did see much of Africa. But expat communities, whenever I popped up somewhere, especially in Africa, the last people I kind of wanted to deal with were expats, people who had maybe gone overseas because life wasn't popping in the States and had settled with that similar mindset. Black, white, other, didn't matter. If you were an expat and identified as an American, sometimes you see the worst of what we have to offer in America represented through expats. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In China, we called that a LBH,
What is that?
a loser back home. like someone who and those people were obvious. Like I worked with some basically like people who had nothing going for themselves. You know that they probably could never find a job in America or in England because there were a lot from the UK that were just overseas and they're like bums. And it's like these people, especially in China, because colorism is real. So
Yeah.
like and I hate to say it like this, but there were some like Caucasian people who had no business like being in China or teaching anyone's child, but the fact that they were white, they could get any position like just by walking in the building.
Wow.
And horrible representatives of America, like
Yeah, the ambassadors you never asked for and don't want.
facts.
That's real. That's really real. And speaking of people of color who've been traveling, let's talk about the brothers and traveling, man. What has your experience been with men of color, especially from the States, man, getting out there and seeing the world? Is it because I know when I went over, I started meeting people. I was like, oh, here's a brother here. Here's a brother here. I would have never heard about your story otherwise, which is why I'm so glad you're on the show. But are brothers really traveling?
Hmm,
Because the women are
that's
crushing it, bro.
I don't know. That's a tricky question for me to answer because I feel like women, it depends. Well, one, I don't know if I have a skewed perspective of who's traveling because like my social medias are pretty much all people that travel. So on my
Right.
timelines, I see black men traveling, but I don't know if this is just everybody or not. That's such a tricky question because when I think about expats, I know more guys living abroad than I do girls, but I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I see more girls traveling. Or I don't know if it's
Okay.
just girls like are better, they take better pictures. So you see those more and they're more flashy and
That's
like
true, though. That's true, though. Guys are garbage on IG with their photos in general.
so it's just trick. I mean, I don't know, but I'd say there's definitely more women traveling. That's a tough one. What do you think?
I think it's almost exactly what you said from having this discussion with a couple different guests on the show. I've noticed, and we've all noticed collectively, that men tend to go abroad and stay there. So these are the expats you're seeing and stay there for longer, whereas women will take more of these consistent trips but never really settle abroad in the same way. That's what we've kind of observed. And the answer is it's unclear. Yeah, I totally relate to you not being sure on what the answer is because I don't know either. I just want to keep bringing it up and asking people who have a good viewpoint into it because you don't only travel, but you organize group trips and you push a lot for the culture and getting people out there. So maybe you've seen something I haven't.
Well, so in saying that, that's why I say there's more women that travel than men because we get way more women sign up than guys. Like
Yeah.
way. Most usually our wait list is I would say 75% women. And I don't know if
Wow.
it's because women are more apt to travel in group, like they're more, I guess, scared to go abroad by themselves. I think that might be one of the reasons why women are more likely to travel in groups than men with like groups they don't know. But I'm not too sure. That's such an interesting question, though. I've thought about this before, and I feel like I see both sides of it also.
Right. And, you know, for what it's worth, you know, I'm okay with things being how they are. You know, the show promotes what it does, men of color traveling, but it's not to the detriment of anybody else. Anyone that feels that they want a new experience and see the world, go do it. I don't care what the ratio is, but it's interesting to feel like there are less men that think and see the world like we do than there aren't.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, this is good. This is a good combo. Like I feel like we could easily be. It's morning time here, so I haven't started my morning shot of tequila yet. But we could talk about this shit for a minute. I need to pull up in Kuala Lumpur. I need to do that.
Yeah, man, definitely. I'm not sure how much longer I'll be out here, but I mean, if I am here, you should definitely pull up. And not
Hey,
a morning
and
shot of
before we
tequila.
round things,
It's a Thursday, bro.
hey man, it's just a day. I'm grateful for it. So let's get this tequila in. That's silly. So before we round things out and learn about what you have coming up with your travels and stuff, you mentioned making a lot of quick trips out of China and Asia, you know, always being on the road. So what are your top 3 like hacks or tips for people who try to take trips either from, you know, the United States perspective or even more interestingly from the Asian perspective? What website are you using? How are you booking these flights? Because you'd be getting mad deals. Like it looks like travel is really affordable in Asia.
Oh, it's super affordable in Asia. I remember the first time I wanted to go to Thailand and I found a flight from Beijing to Bangkok and it was only like $50. And then from Bangkok to Singapore, it was like $13. So travel in Asia is super cheap. I usually use Trip. Trip is like Expedia, but for Asia. I like to use Trip.
Okay, is that
I like
trip.com or trip.china?
Trip.com, and they have an app too. It's a blue app. It's super dope. I like Trip. I like Skip Lagged. I like Skyscanner. I love Google Flights. Google Flights is perfect if you know like for example, when I was in China and I knew I had off dates, I would just go on there, play with the dates, and look at what all cities were available for like what price. So I feel like a lot of the times I didn't plan to go somewhere. Google Flights basically picked where I went. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go wherever's cheapest.
Right, right. And what about lodging? What do you do for that?
Lodging, it just depends on if I'm by myself, if I feel like splurging a little bit, but I'm one of those people. I'm open to everything. Like I've stayed in 5-star resorts, I've stayed in hostels, I've stayed in Airbnb. I love Airbnb. Hotels. I'm really open as far as that goes, like resorts. As I just one thing I'm not open to is like couch surfing or staying in someone's place that someone else is already at. I don't know why. I'm just not open to that. The Airbnb where like
Right,
you have a private room in someone's house, nah.
right, right,
Yeah, that's not for me.
right. And it's a personal preference. It's not my go-to. I'd rather stay in a hostel.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, bet. Well, I'm gonna make sure that I add this to the big collection of, you know, travel tips and info, especially from Asia. Trip.com sounds lit. But as
Trip.
we round out, bro, dude, this has been great. What are you gonna say about Trip?
No, I was just gonna say it's amazing. You should definitely use it if you're ever in Asia. But it's also good for like the States.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't think there are as many flights on it like for like America. But I mean, it still works out in the States too. It's just like Expedia.
Okay, so maybe even if you're planning to do a little, you know, Southeast tour, would it be more profitable to maybe book a one-way out there and then use Trip for the rest and find a way back to the States?
Definitely use a one way if you're open to like me. I like overnight buses, especially if it's a long journey. Like I can get on the overnight bus and sleep the whole way. Wake up, I didn't have to pay for lodging, and I'm in like the next location. So if you're into
Smart.
like buses, I would say use EasyJet. EasyJet is like buses, planes, ferries. It's in Asia, like Southeast Asia. So like Malaysia's on there, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, like all these countries are on. Cambodia are on EasyJet as well. Wait, no, not EasyJet, EasyBook. EasyJet, I think, is the one in Europe.
Okay,
EasyBook. I can
easy
send
book.
you the name after. I have to check the app.
No sweat, we got it. I'll definitely follow up on that because I haven't been out to Southeast Asia, but it's definitely on the list. And I know, I mean, it's a very popular destination. So I think people are gonna. I think they'll do your Googles, kids. Damn, stop using said for everything. Y'all so lazy. That's what's up, bro. But yeah, as we round out, dude, I definitely want to hear what trips you have coming up, what other projects you're working on. I know you got a lot going on, so tell us what you're up to, man.
So with my company, the Roman Republic, we're doing Bat and Bougie again in Thailand in March, and then we have Costa Rica.
So talk about it for those who didn't witness it the first time. What's Bot and Bougie?
So Bat and Bougie, it really was just me trying to see because initially I just told myself, oh, I want to see if I can get a bunch of my friends out to Southeast Asia. And I started like looking for villas. I'd asked people online like who would be interested in coming. And it was super cheap. The trip was only $400 per person. It wasn't like a for-profit trip or anything like that. It was just me seeing
Wow.
if I could put something together and actually get 24 people to come out. And the response was a lot bigger than I thought. I think because the price was so low. So we ended up adding a second villa. So between the two villas, it was 34 people. And Cassie, who is my co-founder of the Roman Republic, she just asked me like, and me and her had never met before. A lot of people online don't know this, but me and Cassie met in Thailand, like at the trip. So we planned all of this before, and it just worked out. She asked me, "Oh, could I help? Is there anything you need help on?" And I was like, "Definitely. No one else has asked me." And she helped me like plan and like get the people together. And when we got to Thailand, it was just magic. Like the vibes were great. Like it just worked out perfectly. And by the end of the trip, we just knew it was something like we needed to do again. And basically from that, like from the buzz we created online, we had a couple companies hit us up and people wanted to do sponsorships and partnerships. And I don't know, we just put a lot of work into it the last half of 2018 to where it's like, okay, as soon as 2019 hits, like we're gonna go hard with it. And I'm hoping that this will like in the next year, it will take me away from like working a 9 to 5 job. Because I eventually want to
Right.
do trips every month, but also like help people plan trips. If say they're not on our trips, I
Okay.
can still help them plan an itinerary. So that's what I'm hoping to do with the Roman Republic. But yeah, Bot and Bougie was amazing. It was so much fun. We had a good mix of like seasoned travelers, people who had never been out the country, and it was just a very dope group. We had people come from the States, Canada, UK, Cape Verde, where else did people come from? Japan. It was a nice like mixed group of people like doing their own things in their professions. And as soon as we got back, we just started working on the next and like setting the blueprint for how we wanted to rock like this year. And it's been dope so far. It's been good.
That's what's going on. So that's Roaming Republic, right?
Correct, correct.
Yeah, and you guys launched in a big way. You guys have videos, you had trips, like the feeds look lit. You guys really put in some work and effort into this, and the trips all look amazing.
Yeah, I'm well, the first trip, I feel like we didn't get the most amazing content because we didn't have a professional photographer or videographer. So that's one thing like that we'll be doing differently is now we'll have like someone professional on team and he's really really dope. His name is Rue. He's from Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a super like dope photographer and videographer. So I'm super excited to have him like on our staff and like I cannot wait to see the content for like the next trips and like we're really like gonna try to like do some big things this year. So I'm excited about that.
That's what's up. And for you personally, do you have any trips coming up, or it's all going to be these ones that you're organizing and hosting?
Well, no. So I'm going to Laos this weekend. I'm leaving for that Saturday morning. And you know what's crazy is usually if I were not planning these group trips, I would not probably be going on group trips. It's not something that I've ever like preferred to do. Maybe when I was younger or like in college, stuff like this was cool. But as an adult, I've just never been interested in them. But I don't know. I feel like maybe because I'm hosting it and I'm organizing it, I enjoy it a lot more. And I enjoy like seeing everyone else happy and like excited and having fun. But I feel like I have
Yeah.
neglected my own travels in this. But so I'm excited to get to Laos. Like I want to plan to go somewhere every month of this year and not just put all of it into Roman Republic because I feel like I'd be losing sense of self just like turning travels into a business. And that's not what I want to do. Well, I want to do that,
Right.
but not like where I'm only traveling with this group or with the company. Like I still have to do my own like journeys and all that because I really do prefer solo traveling over groups.
And they're different. They have different, they have pros and cons for each. But, as you're doing more of the group trips, it definitely makes sense to try to find some way to balance that out so that you still have, said time out wherever by yourself.
Right, definitely.
Word, man. Anything else you got coming up or in the works that you want to talk about?
Well, we have a partnership with the Wind Collective. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They're a UK based company. They're really content heavy. So like their pictures and their videos are like all super amazing, but they approached us after Bot and Bougie, and the same way that Thailand is going to probably be our like flagship trip, the one that we'll probably do yearly because Thailand is just one of those places that will sell. But they do that with Morocco. So they wanted to bring us on for this partnership. And yeah, so we have that in June, and we're actually working on, we're not 100% sold with the idea. We're thinking about doing like an RV trip. And because I feel like a lot of people in America don't explore their own backyards. So I want to hit like Antelope Canyon, Grand Canyon, like all the places like on the West Coast, like in Utah and Arizona and Seattle and some areas of Canada, Banff. Like there's different places I feel like I would want to hit on like a road trip style trip. And we wouldn't go to any major cities. It would be like for the more adventurous type. Because with Roman Republic, we say that we have two different types of trips. One of them we jokingly call trap trips, which are like the Bot and Bougies or like the turn up trips. And then we have the immersion excursions. And those are the ones that we want people who are like more active. They don't mind hiking. They don't mind getting a little dirty. Not just a luxurious like 20,000 square foot mansion. So we're thinking about doing like a North American road trip because Cassie's from Canada. So we're looking into doing that. And then, I mean, we have Bali and Costa Rica, and we have South Africa, and we're doing a huge partnership in December with a company called Afro Chic. And it's for the year of return. It's like this big thing in Ghana this year in December. So it's a really big event. They're proposing like to have, I think the guy's name is Kofi Siriboe. That guy from Queen Sugar. I forget how to pronounce his name, but they had him, and they've been talking to like Jadena and Erica Badu about getting them to this festival in Ghana. And they approached us about doing a partnership. So we'll be like guiding tours there. And there's 3 different tours. There's a 5-day tour, a 7-day tour, and a 14-day tour. And we'll be working with like some local Ghana people to curate these tours and just get like a bunch of traffic there for the year of return, which is supposed to be like a huge, huge festival at the end of this year.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've heard it. I've seen it around, and I thought it was just a marketing ploy. So if there's actually a real movement behind it, I'd definitely check out more of that because I see a lot of travel stuff across my feed.
I hadn't heard of it until they approached us, but it seems like it's a really big deal. I've seen a lot of people talking about it, and I'm sure it'll be a good time. I'm excited about going to Ghana. It's been on my list for a very long time.
That's what's up. Well, dude, thanks for sharing all that you have coming up. And real quick, because I'm always curious to know, just as a man of color, what do you think, or why do you think that men of color need to travel more?
I think they should travel more because a lot of the images of men of color in the media and around the world are negative. And I feel like you can break those stereotypes by just being present, I feel like. Because people may have preconceived notions because of what they see on TV or what they see in movies. Oh, these guys are gangsters, or they don't care, they're disrespectful. But I feel like once you're out in the world and you're meeting people from all over and just having different experiences, like you can open their eyes up to what it means to be a man of color. And then in return, like you can learn about the world. So I just feel like it's important for us to get out there. I don't know, to just shed light and to cast a different image than what's being portrayed. And I don't think it's only bad images of Black males being portrayed, but I feel like more times than not, it is just because of how colorism is so big all over the world. And I just think that being like a physical representative can only like help shed light on that, unless you go somewhere acting a fool. But I feel like most people that travel are cultured, and they don't typically do that.
You're not acting a whole fool, maybe just a little bit of a fool.
Just a little bit.
But yeah, man, that was you said that really well. And yeah, get out there and represent yourself. Be that introduction to somebody to help Not even that it's your job to change their perspective, but just so they can't say, I've never seen it otherwise, you know?
Exactly.
That's what's up, bro. Well, dude, this has been an amazing session. Thanks for spending some time here at The Point, dropping some knowledge and all your experience, man. And we'll definitely stay in touch and stay plugged in for the Roman Republic. I'll definitely put that in the notes and hope to have you back again, bro.
Yeah, man. I thank you for having me. I thank you for being my first podcast.
We out here, man. We trying to do it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. You know what's crazy? And I mean, this is kind of related, but a little unrelated. I met one of my followers when I was in South Korea. And when we were talking, we were just saying how, like, you can follow someone for a good bit of time. And then when you meet them or talk to them, it's not like awkward or like your first time speaking to them. So I feel like in talking to you, it was not awkward or like, oh, I'm just talking to them for the first time. I feel like I'm talking to like a friend or someone that I can relate to, you know? So I appreciate that, like the conversation and all that. It was just, it was dope.
Yeah, bro, I enjoy it. And it's, you know, I've been fortunate to have great guests and great relationships. And we be kicking it back and forth, laughing at goofy shit in the DMs too. So it's like that level of comfort is also there.
Right.
But yeah, man, we're going to sign off, man. Hope to see you again. Safest of travels as you progress. And hope to see you again at The Point, bro.
All right, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Peace. That was definitely an Asia-packed session. Thank you so much, Cedric, for spending time and sharing all of your experience with us. And I know it's only a portion of what you've seen and experienced, but such a valuable perspective. Ced in the City, y'all, on IG, and check out his new venture, Roaming Republic. I think it's awesome that he's putting on these amazing experiences, generating these business partnerships. Like, that's what's up. Entrepreneurship. This is what happens when you travel, y'all. You go out, see the world. You might just want to start your own business. You might just want to be your own boss. It inspires you. It emboldens you. It gives you some confidence to go out and see the world. So I hope everyone is taking notes on that and planning your own trips and adventures, no matter on what scale, domestic, international. This is the kind of stuff that happens consistently, time after time, guest after guest. People get their lives changed out here traveling and seeing the world. So, Ced in the City, y'all. Thank you so much, Ced. If you caught the little intro earlier, we are still looking for men of color to sponsor for passports. So follow us on Instagram at Point Noir Show. Slide in those DMs if you have to, but all the instructions are right there in our highlights under passport. If you need help, I'm here to help. This is a cause that means a lot to us. So we want your submissions. We want them. Give me those submissions, y'all. That all being said, as always, this is yours truly, Jerry the Third, aka Kimono Jack, and I'll see you next week. Peace.